Hey everyone, just like many of you, I'm a fan of the MCU and Marvel in general, and to my surprise, a couple of weeks ago at my local thrift store, I found a copy of Captain America Super Soldier for the Xbox 360. Oftentimes, when I come home with games from the thrift store, they tend to go on my shelf and into my backlog, and it could be months or even years before I actually play through them. But this game caught my eye and I decided to give it a try within a couple of days of buying it. But if the game is still sitting on your shelf, then let's go over the highs and lows of Captain America Super Soldier and see where it should be in your backlog. Upon getting the game, I tried putting it in my Xbox Series X, but it turns out the game isn't backwards compatible, which is a shame, so I plugged in my Xbox 360 and played through the game that way. Playing on the Xbox 360, the game worked pretty well. It did have a little bit of slowdown, but nothing that personally bothered me. But you could tell it definitely had some clunkiness in terms of the combat and camera angles, but we'll get to that shortly. For anyone who's watched my reviews before, you'll know I tend to stay away from story spoilers, and while I want to do the same here, there's some key aspects that I definitely can't shy away from mentioning. First of all, the game takes place during the time frame from the first Captain America movie in the MCU, Captain America: The First Avenger. While it's not the same story as the movie, it takes place in the same time frame with a ton of the same characters and similar plot points. Hydra, Red Skull, Peggy Carter, and so many other familiar characters make appearances in different forms, while the actors from the movies actually reprise their roles, most notably with Chris Evans voicing Captain America and Haley Atwell voicing Peggy Carter, but they're definitely not the only ones. Having the familiar voices really helped set the mood and tone of the game, as it really made it feel like it belonged in the same universe as the movie. The voice acting was also pretty good in terms of quality. It didn't feel like they were just rushing through the lines or anything like that. It felt like they were properly portraying the characters as we know them in the MCU. At certain points, it did have that annoying aspect of Captain America talking to himself in order to explain a puzzle or direction to the player, but it didn't feel like it happened too often and it never got to the point of being annoying. However, it was a noticeable aspect to the dialogue. As for the visuals, I was originally pretty worried as the very first cutscene looked like it had some pretty rough character designs, but honestly as the game went on, I thought overall it wasn't terrible. Some characters looked just like their movie counterparts, while others looked a little rough, but it never really bothered me. The entire color scheme for the game was also pretty bland, as everything was in that brown tint that is always used in World War II era media, whether it be games, movies, or TV shows. Usually it would annoy me a little bit more than it did this time, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that, as they clearly wanted to follow the visual vibe of the MCU movie, so I was kind of expecting it. And the game wasn't overly long and it moved at a pretty steady pace, so I was regularly changing from indoor to outdoor locations, which helped keep the settings from getting too dull. As for the gameplay itself, it's a third-person action game that focuses primarily on melee combat. The combat works pretty well and becomes rather intuitive. You start off with the abilities to punch and throw the enemies, as well as using your shield either as intended for defense or as a projectile. As you progress through the game, you can unlock more abilities for Captain America to make use of, as well as upgrading the power of certain abilities, like being able to hit multiple enemies with one shield throw. As for the hand-to-hand combat, it is decently satisfying, especially because the critical attacks feel extremely impactful. Not only does the camera angle change to show off the cool attacks, but they feel extra powerful during gameplay and they're pretty enjoyable to perform. When it comes to the shield, you can use it to block incoming attacks, and if you use it with the right timing, you can deflect the incoming attacks, especially enemy gunfire, which can help you take out the enemies who are way too far away for your shield throw. Speaking of throwing the shield, you can do it either by going into aim and targeting specific enemies. However, I found that to be extremely slow and not very useful. The better option is by using the quick throw ability, which can attack multiple enemies with one throw, and it flows much better in terms of keeping the combat at a fun, quick pace. It's a great way to knock back multiple approaching enemies, which can help with crowd control when surrounded by a ton of enemies. I actually found the gameplay to be pretty fun. It can flow together extremely well, and the different enemy types with different weaknesses helps keep you on your toes. As for the level designs, they're pretty linear. However, every location has little tucked away areas for you to search in order to find all the collectibles, which there's quite a lot. If you want to find everything in the game, you're going to end up spending quite a bit of time checking around every corner, as well as performing a good amount of parkour by jumping, swinging, and wall running to find everything. While some of the rewards for finding collectibles are in games, such as intel points, which are basically experience points to level up your combat abilities, some of the rewards can be found in the menu with different schematics and reels about the in-game characters and other various things. And all the different levels, while linear, are actually all connected by an underground sewer system, which can allow you to backtrack to earlier moments to find anything you might have missed. I think it's actually quite a good feature and really helped tie the level design together, making the game feel like it's all taking place in one big event in quick succession. While I think there's quite a lot to enjoy about the game, it definitely has some flaws, starting with the camera. I think the game being in third person is mostly great, however, back in the Xbox 360 days, they still hadn't perfected camera positioning. There were quite a few times where it was definitely frustrating. There were moments when the parkour was rather annoying because I couldn't see my location properly, as well as being frustrating during the combat, as I would be trying to focus on specific enemies, with the game just not working the way I was hoping. The combat and movements also had some clunkiness to it, as it definitely had some moments where it wasn't very smooth, especially the shield throw while aiming. However, honestly, the game wasn't nearly as clunky as I was expecting it to be when I first decided to give it a try. But the question is, where do I think Captain America Super Soldier should be in your backlog? And well, assuming you're a fan of Captain America and Marvel in general, I think it should be at the top of your backlog. Yes, I'm willing to admit that the game being a Marvel property and being so closely related to the early MCU film might have bumped this up a little bit for me, but I personally enjoyed the game quite a bit. I like this era of Captain America. I like that they got the actors from the films to reprise their roles. I think most of the combat was pretty fluid and fun, and the game felt really well paced as I beat it in just under the 7-hour mark, which helped prevent it from feeling like it really dragged on too long. And actually, all throughout the game, I couldn't help but think that it's a shame this isn't part of the Xbox backwards compatibility program, as I think the visual and performance enhancements that would come with it would be fantastic additions to this game. And there we have it, where I think Captain America Super Soldier should be in your backlog. If you're able to find a copy at a reasonable price or have one sitting in your backlog, then I wouldn't hesitate to give it a shot, especially if you enjoy the first Captain America MCU film. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a thumbs up. It really helps out a lot. And don't forget to subscribe for more video game related content. If you want to see where Star Tropics should be in your backlog, then be sure to click right here.